Hey Snapchat, all last week I talked about how to raise money from VCs, but this week I'm going to talk about how do you deal with VCs when you're in between fundraising, and is it important to? Several years ago I wrote a blog post called Lines, Not Dots, in which I gave a metaphor for how to raise money from VCs. My idea was you look at an x-axis of time and a y-axis of performance. The very first time I meet you, you're just a dot to me. Whether you perform well or poorly, I have no way of judging your skills or performance. Maybe by the next time I met you, you raised some seed money, you hired a co-founder, you shipped a beta version of your product. You've got some revenue, you've got some good press, you're starting to get noticed as a company. And then over time, maybe I realized some bad things happened, like your co-founder quit or Google announced they're going to compete with you. You could imagine that Snapchat felt a bit like this when Mark Zuckerberg first announced way back when that he was going to go after them. My point in Lines Not Dots was that over time I got to know the entirety of you and how you react to good times and bad. For me, it was a metaphor of what I like to invest in. I like to invest in relationships. I like to know people over time, what makes them tick. I tried to dispel this notion that there was something called fundraising season that you got to do for 2 to 3 months every year and a half. That's the false advice you get from a lot of founders and VCs. The rationale goes something like this. If you meet VCs when you're not prepared to raise, somehow they'll think you look vulnerable or don't have all your plans together. The other false notion is that people say, well, if you meet everyone in a 6-week period of time, you can play everybody off each other. The reality is the more authentic relationship you build over time, the easier it is for you to get people to make decisions on investing in your company. And it's infinitely easier to get a VC to spend time with you if they know you're not actually looking for money immediately. There are some VC funds that may be slightly later stage that prefer to wait until you're actually in market to meet you, but I find most want to meet you early. But my argument is that if it's important for a VC to meet people over time and get to know them, it's even more important for you. The reason is, if I rush into a deal in a frenzy and get super excited and don't really know you, if I make a mistake investing in one company, then I can simply write off that investment. We do 30 investments per fund. One bad investment won't define me, but if you rush to accept a VC just because they paid the highest price and they turn out to be a terrible or unsupportive person, you're screwed forever. There is no divorce clause from your investor. So if Lines Not Dots matters to me, it should matter to you 10x. You want to see how we VCs behave over time. Do we return emails? Do we do introductions when we were said we were going to? Do we treat you the same every time do we remember pertinent details about your company the second or third time we see you, or are you having to re-instruct us every time? So if you buy this premise that meeting a VC several times over a long period of time is in your best interest, that raises a bigger question. As Thomas Walla asked me on Twitter, how do you actually keep a relationship with a VC between fundraisings? And I'm going to answer that question tomorrow. So make sure to come back, M. Suster, on Snapchat.